Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. I'm guessing that we're going to have people continuing to join, but just want to say welcome. I am Sarah Milligan Toffler, the President and CEO of the Children in Nature Network, and it is just my real delight to welcome you all to the 5th annual Richard Louv Prize for Innovation in Nature Connection Awards ceremony. What an exciting day. I am joining you here today from the ancestral lands of the Muskogee Nation, today known as Chattahoochee Hills, Georgia. The Muskogee people have stewarded this land for generations, and that work continues to this day. Right now, the nation is actually working to protect the Okefenokee Swamp here in Georgia. It's such a special place. And they are seeking its recognition as a traditional cultural property so that they have a voice in how this sacred land is managed today and into the future. And if you live in this area, I encourage you to join me in supporting them in that work. And I invite each of you to share your own land story in the chat. And if I think we've dropped into the chat a site where you can discover who has stewarded the land that you currently reside on so that you can learn more about that. I'd also like to extend, a very special thank you to the Brandwine Institute for their generous support in helping to make this event possible today. Through the Brandwine Nature Learning Preserve, which is a beautiful 77-acre nature preserve and learning center in Port Jervis, New York. They create opportunities for people of all ages to connect with the natural world through exploration, education, and discovery. And I want to say welcome and thank you to several of the Brandwine board members who were able to join us today. We thank you for being here. And that includes our wonderful co-founder, my predecessor, Dr. Cheryl Charles. So thank you to the Brandwine Institute. We do have a couple of housekeeping items that I need to cover before we dig into our program today. We do have closed captioning enabled, so if that supports you, please do use that. Hopefully you're already seeing notes in the chat, so you know that that is enabled, and just encourage you to continue to comment and engage with each other as we are together today. Also, want to let you know that we will be collecting questions for our presenters, so I hope you'll be thinking about what you would like to be asking our presenters today, and please do use the Q&A icon at the bottom of the toolbar and not the chat for those questions. So those are I believe that's the housekeeping items. I'm sure someone will correct me if there's something else I need to say here. So I just want to give a little history and context about this award. In 2022, to celebrate our 15th anniversary, the Children in Nature Network created this Richard Louv Prize for Innovation in Nature Connection to both honor Rich and his his visionary leadership, and to recognize innovative leaders from across the Children in Nature movement, and just to share those inspiring stories so that more people can join and be part of this joyous and growing movement. Today, Rich and other members of our Founders Council remain deeply involved in the selection process, in reviewing nominations, making recommendation, and ultimately selecting a recipient for approval by the Children in Nature Network Board of Directors. And as you're seeing here on the screen, this year's wonderful selection committee was comprised of Richard Louv, Cheryl Charles, Nancy Herron, Hayden Brooks, and Janice Swaysgood. So thank you to each of you. I know it's a lot of work and it's a hard decision. And so just want to thank you for all that you do. And so to announce and help celebrate this year's winner, drum roll, it's my great honor to welcome two of the visionary leaders that helped to co-found the Children in Nature Network. my wonderful friends and colleagues, Richard Louv and Cheryl Charles. Rich and Cheryl?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned a few minutes ago, the Richard Louv Prize for Innovation in Nature Connection was established in 2022 at our 15-year anniversary. And the award does honor individuals who are expressing their work and their dedication, not only through innovation, but also creating a way to have that work be sustainable. So the award honors individuals who advance equitable access to nature. And it also includes, we're delighted to be able to say, a $15,000 cash prize that allows those individuals to nurture their work with the help of that award. This year, we will award the fifth annual Richard Louv Prize, and selected from more than 60 different outstanding nominations. Choosing one person from all of those worthwhile and effective leaders is difficult, but it's also incredibly inspiring. So we encourage you, all of you, to learn more about prior nominees. You can some of those from the last 4 years. You can go to the Children and Nature Network website and look for our inspiring leaders feature there. To celebrate this fifth year, this milestone year, we're honored to welcome three of our past four recipients of this esteemed and important award. So with us today, and you'll hear from them shortly, CJ Goulding, Jason Stout, and Luis Alberto Camargo. We look forward to hearing from each of them before too long. And I am more than honored to be able to say that my good friend and co-founder with others of the Children and Nature Network, Richard Louv, will announce this year's recipient before too long. But before he does, we have urged him, asked him, pleaded with him to share a little bit of a taste of his newest book. So with that, Rich, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you. Oh, the book. Let me say this really quickly. The title is Noticing Intimate Encounters with the Natural World. And I understand it'll be officially published June 23rd. So, Rich, we look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I've referred to it as the alleged new book for a long time. So I'm glad as of the 23rd of June, I'll be able to drop the word alleged. It's an honor for me to be here with prior winners of this award, CJ and Luis and Jason, and particularly with the newest winner of it. The book, I should say, and I'm a little embarrassed to talk much about it, so I won't talk a whole lot about it unless you have questions later. I have nature deficit disorder. And about 6 years ago, my wife and I moved to the mountains east of San Diego, which is a pretty wild area. There's a small town we live outside of, Julian, California. And there are literally mountain lions right outside my window, along with a lot of other critters. And the name of the book is Noticing, because you can't protect anything that you don't love. And you can't love anything that you don't deeply notice. And our primary purpose, I think, in the Children of Nature Network is to help ourselves, but more importantly, to help others, particularly kids, but also their parents and mayors and community members, to notice deeply the nature around them. There's some research that's come out, in addition to the huge increase in the amount of research on the benefits of nature to human health and well-being, which, by the way, has gone from about 60 studies that I could find when I was researching Last Child in the Woods to today, over 1,500 studies that can be seen in abstracts on the Children of Nature Network website. And apparently it's actually more like 1,700. We're still adding to the website. But all of that is available to you free, all of those abstracts, to go to your principal, to go to the city council, to convince them of how important this is to human welfare and why it really should be considered a human right to have this connection between children and the natural world and the rest of us. So we moved here, and there are literally mountain lions. I have lots of videos of them that I have my webcams positioned around our house on our acre. There's a bobcat that's joined us in the last few days. I call him Big Bob when he's good, and I call him Robert when he's bad. And we've gotten to know these animals in ways that I didn't really anticipate. I hoped that we would, but fully engaging with nature is very different from the way that science usually approaches it. I believe that there are two habitats. The first is the natural habitat, the natural physical habitat. And we do a lot to protect and teach our children about that habitat. But then there's a second habitat, which I call the habitat of the heart. We don't do very much as a society to protect that habitat or to teach our children about it. And I think in the Children Nature Network, that's our primary purpose, is to recognize, to notice, and to teach our children about the habitat of the heart, in addition to the physical habitat. The research that has evolved, in addition to the research on health, has to do with the great conversation that's going on all around us. Human beings are lonely. We have a kind of species loneliness. We see a lot in the news in recent years about the loneliness epidemic. But this precedes our generation. This is in us. There is something within us that deeply needs to know that we're not the only life in the universe, that we're not alone in the universe. Obviously, that has some religious connotations, but we're not alone. The more that science has learned about the amount of communication in nature, the mycelium, that connects the fungus, that connects the roots of the trees of a forest and then connects that forest with other forests. There's communication, conversation going on beneath the surface of the ground. We now know a lot more about that than we did 15 years ago. Animal species, communicate among themselves within their own species, but also across species. When children begin to learn about that, about the great conversation, about the fact that they're not alone in the universe, their interest is greatly magnified. This goes far beyond testing the pH of water in a pond. It goes to understanding and feeling what it must be like to be a frog in that pond that has jumped into the water before we arrive, as we arrive, and then reemerges if we sit and listen and watch long enough. That's magic to a child. That's magic to me. It's magic to you. That's the deep noticing that I'm talking about. Science is playing a big role in this change. When I went up the mountain that I can see from our front window one day with a nature therapist who took a group of us up to do forest bathing. I'm sure you've all heard of forest bathing. I noticed when people would come back to the circle to report what they found, what they learned sitting under a tree, or a number of other exercises that the nature therapist asked us to do, that they often spoke in a way that I had a vague recollection of hearing before. they were speaking in the form, in a sense, of fairy tales. There are things that they noticed that were very hard to talk about without telling a story. Science has been showing us just how much there is out there that we don't notice readily. Science is also showing us that we have at least 9 human senses. It's no longer 5 that they talk about. Some scientists are now talking about as many as 30 or 40 or 50 human senses. Some talk about even more human senses, most of which we don't know we have, some of which we use without knowing we're using them. I think that's what happens when we go into the forest or another natural place. We are sensing more than we realize. Children are more open to this than adults. We've been doing this from the beginning. Our ancestors, the Kumeyaay people who live in this region, many of them that I've spent time with still remember that, still do that. They still sense that there's more there than they see. And what do we do with that information? What have we always done with that information that we don't sense but don't fully understand? We anthropomorphize it. We turn it into stories. That's where elves, I think, come from, and fairy rings, and spirits in the woods that we talk about, that are tribal, whether we're descended from indigenous people of North America or from the Celtic people of the British Isles or elsewhere. We come from a long line of storytellers, a long line of noticers, people who have gone into the forest and realized that the forest really is enchanted. In the book, I call that bioenchantment because it's not based on just fantasy. It's based on the real life, the great conversation that is going on all around us. And as people who work in the Children in Nature movement, I think there is a new stage coming in which we go deeper into that ability to deeply notice the natural world and to recognize that nature is enchanted, bioenchanted. It's now my honor to recognize someone who notices and who works extremely hard to connect children and others and her community to the natural world. Carol Peralta is this year's winner of the Richard Louv Prize for Innovation in Nature Connection. Carol is an accomplished and rising leader in the Children in Nature movement, as I've said. She joined a nonprofit called Wildwoods, straight out of college. And after a decade of leadership across every aspect of the organization's work, she's been named the next executive director. Wildwoods is based in Los Angeles. It blends the natural and social sciences to create inspiring outdoor experiences that help people apply the gifts of nature to their everyday lives, to in fact notice at a deeper level. Grounded in the belief that access to nature is a human right, Wildwoods works to foster these deeper connections, not only between people and nature, but also between community and nature. At the heart of Carol's work is a deep commitment to equitable access to nature and to community healing. Her most innovative initiative, Rooted Resilience, partners with therapists and health workers at a Los Angeles hospital to support families experiencing migration-related trauma through guided experiences in nature. The program combines outdoor learning, mental health support, and community care to help participants build resilience and connection. Carol also oversees the Paseo program, which partners with other community-based organizations to provide field trips to natural spaces for families, and Wildwood's community garden program in the Pico Union community south of downtown Los Angeles. The garden provides a green sanctuary for residents in one of the most densely populated, park-deprived neighborhoods in Los Angeles County. In fact, the largest green space there is the local cemetery. During recent ICE raids in the neighborhood, the garden became a literal sanctuary, sometimes the only outdoor space where community members felt safe. The garden has also become a regular stop for therapists with the Los Angeles Department of Mental Health, who bring clients to visit on a regular basis. Through her leadership, compassion, and vision, Carol is helping redefine how nature can support health, healing, and belonging in communities that need it most. Congratulations, Carol. Thank you for inspiring so many of us. I often say that there are two kinds of people in the world, people who do and people who write about people who do. And Carol, you're one of the people who does amazing work. And I'm in awe of the work that you do. Congratulations. And by the way, we're lucky to have one of our great on-site staff to present Carol with her award.
Hi, my name is Amelia Rodland. I am the Content Strategy Manager at the Children in Nature Network, and part of my job is to help tell stories of the leaders in the Children in Nature movement. Carol, your story will be an inspiration to many. It's my privilege to present you with this award.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all. Let's set this here for now. I'm a very sentimental person, and Richard, hearing you speak, I felt that the universe confirmed something in what I had to share today, because I was debating how vulnerable I should be or I could be. And I'm feeling this is a very tender space, and you just gave me an anchor, which is to share the habitat of my heart with you all. And the reason I would like to do that is because I'm part of the community that I serve. So in sharing that habitat, you're going to get to know them as well. And it's a community full of deserving children, families, and infrastructure, green spaces that could use some love too. Today marks the anniversary of, and I'll preface this by saying, welcome into the habitat of my heart. Whatever I share here, I'm comfortable sharing. It is not hurtful for me to share. I am at a point where I understand and I make meaning in my experiences. But today's the anniversary actually of my dad's passing. And it was a synchronicity for me. And also, I understood this moment to be something that I've hid a lot in my life because of the fear of being a target of violence, of something horrible, right? And that's one of the experiences that formed this narrative for me in my heart. And then here today, it's like a new meaning to the day. I'd only hold it. Yeah, I'm gonna sit down. I'm really holding tears back because I want to get out words, but I know this is a place where that would be possible. I have a base flow of joy and grief at this moment, as much of my community does. wonderful things happen, and we also know the background in which we're living in the current moment. And in my life, the place that I have turned to for this healing, what allows me to be here in service, is nature, big and small. I love what you shared, Rich, about noticing, because that's exactly how my relationship with nature began, is noticing it in small ways. Because growing up in Los Angeles without access to a lot of green spaces, you pay attention to the smaller areas around you. And immersive experiences are beautiful too. There's value in both. And a few years ago, well, maybe now about 8 years ago, my mom was going through something very difficult, and I wasn't sure what the results were going to be from that. I was in my first year of grad school in hydrology department. I was learning about the porosity of aquifers. Porosity refers to the amount of pore space in the soil that allows water to move through it. And when I was learning about that, because my heart was elsewhere, my heart was with my mom, I was just reflecting with this aquifer. And I'm like, I'm an aquifer. And I was like, and the way this grief, this water is going to move through me has to do with my composition and what I'm made of. And it really just gave me structure through which to reflect. I didn't have maybe all the tools that I have now, but it was a way to conceptualize what I was experiencing. And I see that happening for our families all the time when we're on trips, especially if they have had experiences like mine, or at least I can be illustrative of their experiences, if not exact. So I just want to say that if I can share anything here today, it's that I love you all, and I love the work we do. I'm so grateful that you're all part of this ecosystem of care for nature, and that includes us, because we are nature. And I'll stop there, but thank you.
Oh, Carol, deep, deep congratulations. And thank you for sharing a bit of your heart and your story with us today. And we are just very honored to be able to give you your flowers today. So thank you. And, I'm excited today that we have several of our other past recipients with us today to join you in conversation. So we have Luis, Jason, and CJ, and I just am going to start by introducing your co-awardees. What a cohort to be a part of! It's just such a wonderful legacy to see all of this great work, and we're just excited to hear more about your work, Carol, and to get updates from our wonderful previous winners. So Luis Alberto Camargo was our 2023 Richard Louv Prize recipient, and he's the founder and director of the Organization for Environmental Education and Protection, a nonprofit organization in Bogota, Colombia. Welcome, Luis. So wonderful to see you again. We also have Jason Stout with us today, who was our 2024 Louv Prize recipient, and he is the founder and executive director of Stout Reach. And welcome, Jason. So wonderful to see you again, and looking forward to catching up with you. And CJ Goulding, who is the 2025 winner, last year's winner, and is the founder and executive director of Boys in the Wood. And welcome, CJ. Nice to see you. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our inaugural winner, Atia Wells, the amazing Atia Wells. She is the founder and executive director of Backyard Base Camp. She's also a pediatric nurse and the mother of two, doing extraordinary work in Baltimore, Maryland. And if you haven't ever checked out Google Backyard Base Camp and prepare to be amazed. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today because it's their very busy season at Backyard Base Camp, and she sends her well wishes and congratulations to you as well, Carol, from Atia. So let's get the conversation started. Luis, it's been 3 years since you received the Louv Prize. Um, I know you've been at this work a very, very long time. And just would love to get an update from you on your work and the things that are that you're noticing these days, and what's challenging you and getting you excited.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. It's not only a pleasure, but a privilege to be here with such incredible people. The work of nature and education is every day more important. And I see how, as we reconnect to nature, we end up building more empathy, more love, and more capacity to live in right relation. So this is a key component in all our countries right now, especially with so much chaos that we're seeing. I've been working in a couple of things. We just launched with the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the Global Initiative on Nature-Based Education, which is quite exciting. There's a huge group of individuals already working together and organizations looking to activate what we're calling the Mycelial Nature-Based Education Activation Network. So the idea is to really get people activated, both from the learner, teachers, systems, so schools, principals, organizations, to the public policy actors, and the whole system active in bringing nature to the center of education and remembering the importance of bringing learning out into nature. And I think that's what brings us here. So that's quite exciting. And there's a lot of resources that are going to be published and have been published already, which is really cool and accessible. The other thing I've been really reflecting is how nature-based education really impacts everything we do. So when we talk about transition as a culture, we need to transition in our relationality. And I think when we started, 28 years ago, to think of the importance of reconnecting children with the earth, our motivation was seeing that separation was creating a gap of behavior based on relationality or lack of relationality. But in reconnecting with nature, we realized that there is a gap in our relationship to ourselves and to others also. So ultimately, nature-based education is about remembering that we are nature and nature is alive within us. And natural systems don't work from the individual expressions or forms, so each species. It really works in how all these species interact together. We are interdependent and interconnected. So really working to understand that in anything we do, it can be, from our families, in our own lives, but also our organizations, and moving to the way we learn is fundamental. So this has been really one of my focuses, and how to bring this to finance, to businesses, and to other actors to understand that, the key component here is the relationality that, when put together, can increase vitality of living systems. So if we think of that, we really think of the transition towards regeneration and the function of education to activate regenerative capacities. And this is a bit of what I've been really looking forward and working on, and trying to activate really a global network of people who share their love for nature and who help other fall back in love and activate their regenerative capacities.
Well, Luis, thank you. That is so powerful and just it's deeply touching to hear you articulate that, and how as we become we're all here together from around the world today because of technology, but also recognizing that with that technology, we also need that capacity to connect to each other, to ourselves, and to the rest of the natural world. So, yeah, thank you for sharing those deep reflections, and for your great work. It's incredible. And I just want to remind folks that if you've got questions for Luis and our other panelists, please put those in the Q&A, and we'll get to your questions, and you can talk directly to these great folks. So CJ, some recent exciting TEDx kind of stuff happening with you. Please share with the group about your recent projects with Boys in the Wood and your recent Resilience in the Redwoods TED Talk with Ron, and the wonderful Ron Griswold, how nature can build community. Just love to hear what's been going on with you, the conversations that you're having, what's giving you energy and hope these days, and what are some of the things you're thinking about and noticing in the work that you're doing?
Thanks, Sarah, and excited to be here with you all. I think one of the things that Rich was talking about earlier was the power of storytelling, and I think storytelling is so strong, such a strong component, because it is something that is very strongly human. It's something that connects us to our humanity, and one of the things that we've been trying to do with Boys in the Wood is to tell new stories, similar to what Luis was talking about, tell new stories of connection, and connection in a lot of different ways. Connections that people are finding to themselves and to better health through nature. Connections people are finding to others, that relationality that Luis was speaking of. And then the connection that we all have as a humanity, to like noticing the connection we all have as humans, as a part of nature, as Carol mentioned earlier. And so one of the things that I'm personally passionate about, and that we are endeavoring and stepping into with Boys in the Wood, is telling that story in a whole bunch of different ways, translating this idea that nature and community are healing, and that they are central components of our humanity. And we're trying to do it in different ways. I think just as everybody speaks different language, people also receive stories, receive the values that they carry in different ways as well. And so we're trying to make it the story of nature and community show up through maybe it's a TED Talk, where we're able to share with the people who are interested in that and who watch TED Talks. Maybe it's a short film that allows our members and participants to be able to share the story of their healing and their journey as they share that story with their communities as well. And maybe it's research. We recently published a paper in partnership with Colorado State that shares the benefits of our retreat-based programming and how it shifts the identity and the self-assessment and the connection with nature as well. And so in all of that, I think the idea is to write different stories of what it means to be human, what it means to live in connection with a better version of health for ourselves and for our communities. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And because I think the last thing I'll say, that I think that in order to write a new future, or to return and remember the past that we've come from and that we may have been disconnected from or forgotten, we have to write the story of what will come. And so that's part of what we're hoping to do in a lot of different ways and with a lot of different partners. So excited to, amongst all the other projects and programs that we're running, I just excited to notice what it looks like to tell a story of a future where we're all healthy and connected to nature, and excited to be doing that in the audience of some of the peers here as well.
Thank you, CJ. That's, you are a gifted storyteller, you're a gifted communicator, and you do find those, you've always found those kind of different pathways to the storytelling that's very authentic to you and your experience. So thank you for continuing to do that work, and for your important voice. Jason, I understand you've had some time in front of the film cameras as well since we last talked. I understand you've got a great film, and you've been on tour with it. And I know we at the Children of Nature Network here have been thrilled to help promote that. And yeah, to just share how that came together, what you're trying to do with that, and really just anything else that you'd like to share with us about what you've been up to, what's giving you hope, what's exciting you these days.
Thank you. And I mean, to start, I just want to say a couple things. I just think about, I'm just back from, as I was explaining before we got on here, is that I'm back from the National Military Survivor Seminar and Good Grief Camp out in Arlington, Virginia, where we had more than 350 kids, military survivors who had someone die serving in the military, along with hundreds of veterans and active duty folks and volunteers. And we're at a crucial time. There's a lot of stress going on, and my focus has been grief. And but there's so much more than grief. There's collective grief. We're grieving the way things were. We're grieving peace. We're grieving nature. It's more clear than ever. Nature is home, and we're homesick, even for those kids that haven't ever spent time. And I'm thinking about what Richard was saying at the beginning of this, and just talking about the mountain lions. And last year we were in Florida, in Destin, had maybe 50 kids, 50 adults, and we were in a treehouse talking about interspecies loneliness. A few minutes later, we walked out to the ocean and we were wading in the water. And all of a sudden, a pod of dolphins shows up. I mean, we were in tears. We were crying. I don't even know what to think of it. It was like they were sent our way. But going back to this film, yes, James Parker came to me because of this. He found me on the Children in Nature Network website and gave me a call, and he just said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're putting together a film that's featuring different outdoor educators, connecting people to each other, to nature, to well-being, and we want you to be in it. So they joined us out in San Antonio, where we did some of our sessions on the Riverwalk, and it's amazing. And they got to see these kids, even with an hour outside, when they're focused, when they look at nature and they start to look for every micro detail, the ladybugs, the leaves, how they start to transform. Their body language transforms instantly. They forget the cell phones. When they're out in nature, nature always wins. And one of the things that we've been working on is just really, if you're a grieving kid, you don't always have counseling. You don't want counseling sometimes. You don't always have an event to go to. You don't always have friends to talk to because maybe they're afraid to have that discussion. Death is scary. We're pain avoidant, we're grief avoidant, but we're very focused on the fact that we can't be passive in our healing. And what happens when you're 6 or 7 years old and you hear that, right? What do you do? And what we've been doing is we've been teaching them that the fastest way to change the way the brain's working, to turn off the ruminating and negative loops, is to walk outside and touch a tree. And to see that when we have someone like that, some kind of tragedy, the world looks hostile. Someone dies. Now everything's hostile. Now my nervous system is a wreck. I'm always waiting for the next negative thing to happen. But then you walk out, and part of it is we're focused on those trees and forest bathing. And okay, the tree provides shade, oxygen, fruit. So food, shelter for the animals, shelter for us, the phytoncides that we learn about, that we breathe in and we absorb. They get it. They love it. Then they start to flip and they see these trees as the most friendly thing in the universe. So now you imagine each time they walk outdoors, they could be stressing, but then all of a sudden they see these trees and everything changes instantly. Their nervous system relaxes. They're in a friendly universe. And that's really, James Parker with his film In Our Natures helped us to amplify that, get the word out through traveling the country and the festival tour that he did. They were at South by Southwest. Now they're screening. They're doing a screening. They're continuing the screening tour, but they're also doing something where educational distribution, where schools and universities can download the film for free and watch it. So it's great. Reach a lot of people.
It's awesome, Jason. And, I just, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm just kind of hearing some of the similar themes as to what you were sharing, Carol, about, I love what you said, Jason, about, nature is home and we're homesick, and just that grief that many of us are dealing with on many different levels. And Carol, I was hearing that coming through in some of what you were sharing as you were talking. And so just would love for you to share a little bit more about your work through Wildwoods. Obviously, this has been, for our immigrant and refugee communities in this country. The being targeted isn't new, but it's been a particularly difficult year. And just wondering how you have been using your program to help families navigate through this particularly challenging time.
Yeah, so it's interesting this Saturday we're concluding an 8-week cohort of families who have been in the US for 3 years or less, and they've come here for varying reasons. They have children that have complex medical needs, and we're going outdoors to heal, right? We have a therapist coming with us. But what's happening, and this is different than what we're used to experiencing when we're with our families from other programs, is that some things in the outdoors are triggering them. The sound of a waterfall is reminding them of, for one family, going through a Venezuelan section where there was a waterfall and that they were close to danger and they had to pause, right? And that was something that we were prepared to discuss. So I'll share the reflection was that for them, it was like a moment of hypervigilance. And so that waterfall sound turned from something that could have been very peaceful into a quick moment of, oh no, what's, for a moment in their nervous system. But then they came back to it and they're like, well, no, I'm currently psychologically safe. I'm physically safe. I am at this park. And before we were doing this Rooted Resilience program, for a lot of our families, what we were hearing are what we all know, right? Those benefits from nature. We're feeling good. We're feeling de-stressed. The wind feels good on our skin. And so for this program, we're really trying to do activities that ground us with our hands, with our feet, to keep us present in the space. And also having to notice what makes people uncomfortable, that they may have put away for a little while, but it does make them uncomfortable. Can we ask them to take off their shoes? And that may sound like not a problem, but if they were directed to do that in a dangerous setting, that can also be something that brings them to a certain mindset. So it's a real learning experience for us as an organization at Wildwoods, and we're really grateful that we get to partner with mental health experts, as well as bringing in our own lived experiences that inform this work. Not just myself, but our staff who participates. And really the best tool set that we have is to be present in the moment and to notice what we can provide for them at that moment, even if we don't have the answers. I think someone mentioned, I'm sorry that I don't remember, but sometimes when you're processing grief with someone, the best thing to do is just listen, right? And how you listen is very important. So that's what's happening right now with that program.
Wonderful, Carol. Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to turn to some questions that we've gotten from some of the folks that are joining us here today. And we've got a question from Doug Moore. Hi, Doug. He's asking and this is for all of you, so everybody get ready to sort of think about what you would say to this. But, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities to create more, he's saying nature spaces, I'm going to say, that those opportunities for nature connection in children's daily lives at some level of scale? Like what are you seeing as those opportunities for how we make sure that all kids really have this opportunity?
I can start, Sarah, giving it a shot. And I go back to COVID. During the pandemic, even though nature was there, nobody had access. And this really made me think of how we can closely relate with nature every day. And I think it's bringing nature into the home and into the family relationships. So as we're able to invite nature to our spaces, and reconcile our relationship with nature within the home and the family, I think that is the biggest and easiest thing to do. And it's the place where we can actually bring the concept of relationality and nature as kin, nature as part of our family. So I think that is a really important place we must not forget, and we must invite and stimulate.
Thanks, Luis. And I, maybe one thing I would add to that, we have a concept that we call nature everywhere, which is both descriptive in that nature already is everywhere, if you notice, right, Rich? But it also is aspirational in saying that we want to have more nature everywhere. And so, but I think, as you're talking about the, nature as kin and into the family, part of that is recognizing that nature is already all around us. And if we take the time to notice. Carol, Jason, or CJ, anything you would add or a different idea that you want to bring to the table? Jason?
I just think it's fun because I have groups of adults and kids, right? And the kids really they don't know nature the way we did. The adults are like, oh yeah, like you mentioned, Last Child in the Woods, saving our children from nature deficit disorder. The adults instantly, I know you all know that, but they're like, wow, that makes sense to me. And it's kind of like the movie Stranger Things when my daughter watched it and she started liking Metallica, right? And it was like, I've been trying to get her to like Metallica for a long time. And it's like it's creating a discussion. We know that there's an issue with the tech addiction, and the adults are seeking solutions. They want their kids off. They want them out in nature. So I think we're at prime time to and I agree with Louise that it's everywhere. And just how do we walk out the door as a family and have a ritual every night after dinner to touch a tree, right? It's time.
CJ?
Oh, go ahead. Carol was about to say something.
Okay. Thank you. I was going to say at our scale, something that works is we gamify everything for the kids because they need to be so, even in the outdoors. One great activity, and some of you might know it, is like using paint chips. We call it rainbow chips. Go find this color, and something that just keeps their hands and their minds and their full bodies like engaged in an activity has been effective. Something that's a little bit more complex is also getting the adults in their lives to model that, because we have adults that'll be like, you need to go outside, but they don't make or have the time to do it themselves, right? They're always in a rush. So then, an example, we have a fish tank here in our office, and sometimes the kids want to stop and look at it, but the parent or the guardian is on their way to an appointment and doesn't have the time to pause. So that's something that the time scarcity is real, and I think that's a challenge as well. But if the adults would, I think, also model, that can help if that's a possibility.
I'll follow Carol's lead. I think that this is the Children in Nature Network, and our focus is children and their families. I think often we lose, we get hyper focused on children and forget that children are like seeds planted in the soil of society and their family and their community. And I think if we as adults and society aren't modeling, or if that isn't one of our values and our intentions, then the children won't just pick it up and carry it for themselves. And so I think it takes there's some effort to share, and there's some effort to shift our like mental models, the way we go about things, the way we, like Jason was saying, if it's a family tradition to go out and touch a tree, that's set by the parents. And then I guarantee you those children will grow up with that value, that tradition. So children follow what they see from us. They follow our lead. And so this brings us into accountability. How can we shift the things, the ways that we have structured society so that it's in a part of our routine and a part of our culture, a part of our values, and then children will absolutely the dominoes will fall into place after that.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. That's, I think that responsibility, like it shouldn't be on the next generation, right? It should, like the adults have a big role to play here. I think one of maybe as kind of a follow up to some of the things that you all are saying, we've got a question here from someone who's saying that they have a big challenge getting families to sign up for forest therapy programs that they offer, and that it can just be difficult to interrupt those routines that we're talking about having that nightly routine. Like, how do you break the routine of not doing that? And, what advice would you give on how to effectively engage, families so that they respond to those invitations to engage more immersively, for someone that's having a challenge getting people there? And I know you all are doing that in one way or another. So got some good expertise in the room to share.
Carol, go ahead. You were, if you want to came off mute.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We really look to them to tell us what logistically works for them. We've adapted our programs to meet their needs. So logistics is a big one. Can they go Saturdays? Can they go Sundays? Do we need to alternate? Because some folks go to a service on Sunday, so they need to prioritize filling other parts of their life as well. And while we know nature is a priority, it might seem like an extracurricular. So we provide touch points that are a drop-in touch point via our community garden. And while being immersed is ideal, creating opportunities to maybe start at the center of a series of concentric circles has been helpful. We start with one activity, get them to see the value of spending or doing a nature-based activity. And then we create a relationship, which then allows us to be like, we're going to go on a 5-hour trip now. And then they'll buy into that and they'll make an effort to shift things around to come.
I like letting Carol speak first because then I get to follow up on her wise words and just say yes, that. One of the things that we often do is I start with we start with activities that they are already familiar with, that they are already used to, that they already have factored into their schedule, and then we show them that some of these things can be done in nature, or some of these things are already being done in nature. I like to call it my stepping stone theory, but it's probably someone actually probably has a programming and a framework around it. But you start with what someone is familiar with as you're crossing this river, and what's on the other side. We often start with the nature that we want people to connect with, but I start with the person and what they're already connected with, and find one thing that can get them a step closer. And so if it's a picnic in the park or like a family reunion in the park, I start with that. If it's if it's their grandmother growing vegetables in the garden, I start with that. And then you bridge and take them another step. You build a relationship there, you build trust there, and then invite them another step further. We don't cross Grand Canyons or chasms by just jumping over from one side to the other. We build bridges, or we build stepping stones so that people can go across one step at a time from what's familiar to them to something that might be new.
Jason or Luis, anything you would add?
I would agree with both, and I would add one thing, which is to start practicing spaces of shared silence. I think this is one of the most difficult things to do, and technology is not our friend because it always saturates every space. But once you allow spaces of silence shared with others in your community, in your family, and then bring nature in the activity. So if you're ultimately walking on through the park to go to church, being able to stop for a couple of minutes or seconds even, and share the silence in nature, that really resets your capacity to relate and starts creating this sense of let's say cohesion with the community and with nature. So I think silence becomes a really important element to bring back into our lives.
Thanks, Luis. Jason?
I think it's a tough question. I mean, I've also worked closely with Outward Bound, which does wilderness expeditions that are 7 to 85 days, and I still advise them. And that started back in 2001. And I can tell you right now, it's a lot tougher to get kids to go outdoors. Like it's a lot tougher to get them to go outdoors for longer than a week. And I feel like I've had to refocus, and that is just get your foot out the door. But I don't know. I think it's the call to action to do it from your own home. And that's the tough part when you have a program and you're trying to fill seats. But I don't have an answer yet. People are busy.
Yeah. Rich, I see your hand is up. Did you want to chime in here?
First, I want to say to Carol how important it is, how impressed I am that you're working with migrant communities under the current situation. One of the things that I've been saying for a while is to think about natural cultural capacity. The cultures, for instance, recent migrants, or people who are involved in the 200-year-old migration of Mexican people up, back and forth across the border, that is very, very old. And people pretend that it's new and something that needs to be stopped, but it goes back a long way. And many of the people who have come to the US from Latin American countries, for instance, bring far more natural capacity to a knowledge of nature than people who grew up like me. And we need to recognize that natural capacity and those talents and that knowledge, and not just assume that it's going to be somebody who looks like me who has an REI backpack marching into a neighborhood where people don't look like me, and I'm going to tell them how to connect to nature. And oftentimes the people that have that capacity, there's not much reinforcement of that, but Carol, I bet you're reinforcing that. The other thing that I would suggest is to use creativity, to use tools like photography and art, nature journaling. When you go out and you actually create something beautiful by being in nature. There's an artist that I interviewed who does remarkable paintings. And she goes and finds a sit spot in a forest or woods or some other place. And she sits there and waits until other animals show up. And maybe it's a squirrel or a group of foxes. And she sits there and waits until they show up. And sometimes she waits a long time. And then she watches those, for instance, foxes for as long as she can. And she wonders about their stories. What did they have for breakfast this morning? How's the littlest fox feeling about the biggest fox? What did they do last week? What are their stories? Not just story, but stories. She thinks about that. Then she takes a quick photograph of the foxes and then leaves her sit spot and goes back to her studio in her home. And she begins to paint from that picture of those foxes. And as she paints, she thinks about their stories. And I swear to you, when you look at the paintings she does of, say, those foxes, you can see their stories in their eyes in these paintings. Robert Bateman, the great Canadian icon, an artist, one of the greatest wildlife artists in the world. We've gotten to know him. And I once saw his paintings. I helped him open a gallery of his paintings in Vancouver. And I walked in and I saw these wall-sized paintings of bears and elk. I'd seen them in books and I was impressed. But when I walked in, that bear was about to step out of the wall. And I asked him, how do you do that? He says, I become the bear. So that kind of use of traditional tools, creativity tools, I think is important for this too. We all want to be productive. We don't want to be just passive consumers. We want to be participants in the creativity of nature.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for raising your hand. That's really great. I'm going to take us on a little bit of a left turn here. There's a question. It was posed for you, Luis, but I would actually like to widen it to all of our panelists here. Just this challenge of how our economies are structured against nature, and how recognizing that people, like what does it look like to have our economy structured in such a way that that we're rewarded for not extracting but for having that reciprocal relationship with nature.
I think that we need to understand what economy actually means and where it comes from. So economy is eco, and economy is our care for our place. It ultimately comes from how we manage our place, and manage it's a new word. So the true word of the language is care of place. Care of my place. This is the meaning of economy, caring for home. So if we think of it that way, then we need to return to the true meaning of economy. And this has to do with unlinking economy and financial capital, because we have equated financial capital as the only capital with value. But we actually live in a polycapital, even pluricapital world, where there are so many other types of capital that bring vitality to our systems. So we can definitely activate capitals such as joy, celebration, spirituality, maybe cultural vitality, cultures of care, sense of interbeing. And these are all capitals that exist in our communities, in our places. We need to add to this, ecological vitality, abundance of water, food, that those are all capitals we need to bring into the formula of the economies of caring for home. So I do think that we are far from reaching this place, but there is definitely a lot of hope I see, because I see many bioregions and are getting activated to understand and recognize and discover that this is happening. When I speak of bioregions, I'm speaking of areas that share a common culture and common, let's say, ecological dynamics that sustain them. And the truth is that sometimes in our cultures, more Western cultures, we wait for someone to change the system. But that is an oxymoron, let's say. It's a trap, because our systems were created by us, by our ways of thinking. So if we really understand that, ways of thinking are also transformed by our ways of acting. So the stories we tell create, the realities we live in, but the realities we live in create the stories we tell. There's a circularity game there. We realize that we have the power of place to change the stories. And that changes the economies, that changes reality. And ultimately that changes, the structures and the systems we live in. But this will not happen global to local. It will only happen local to global, I think. So many communities and bioregions in different places of the world in the regenerative movement are really taking this challenge and starting to shift their local communities, starting small and expanding to their bioregions, and understanding that they want to live and write the story of the world they want to live in. And by doing this, economy changes. And we actually start embodying living an economy defined by the process of caring for our territory, for our place. So we definitely need to choose if we want to live in economies of fear or economies of love, economies of extraction or economies of care. And our ultimate challenge ultimately is, to learn to and to shift from living from nature, which is the paradigm, to living in nature, to living with nature, to living for nature, and ultimately to living as nature. But this we need to live since we were born, with our families, with our communities, in our learning systems, whichever they are.
Thanks, Luis. CJ?
Luis, I think one of the things you said was one of the words you used was embody. And I think that stands out for me because to embody something, you have to notice it, and then you have to internalize it, and then you have to change the way that you think and move in order for that thing to now be you. And so that our mental models, like you said, our mental models need to shift, and then we start doing it. When I was working with the Children in Nature Network, one of our trainings with the young leaders was understanding how to tell the story of yourself, and then the story of us, and then the story of action. And I think this idea of creating this new economy starts in that same way, similar to what you mentioned. It starts with me shifting the way that I move and relate to people around me, the way I think and connect with myself, the way I connect with nature, the way I connect with others. And then for us to shift how that happens as a community as well, and then for it to shift in our actions. One of the things I did want to point out, because you made so many great points, I think I don't want to double or overstate them, but one of the things I do want to highlight and point out is that as the system we have been born into and live in is not designed for that to be the case. And so when we start moving in that way, when we start remembering what our humanity looks like, when we start noticing and calling it out and acting in that way, the current system that we live in will react and try and put that and put us back in our place. And so there is a fortitude, there is a resilience, there is a strength, a practice of building strong roots so that when the winds do come, and they will come, we are both working in community and have a mental model that says no matter what winds I face or we face, we will continue because we know that this is the way we are supposed to live. And so I just want to encourage folks that, like, as you embody some of what Luis is talking about, there will be friction, there will be fight back from the systems that exist that are extractive, but that this is what all of our ancestors have faced in a path towards liberation and freedom. And most people who do that work towards liberating or growing or designing a better world don't end up seeing the result of what they fight for, but the generations that come after do. My grandmother brought our whole family to this country, and she saw some of the fruits of that labor, but she's not going to see what happens 2 or 3 generations after that. And so I want to encourage, I think I'll end my comments with an encouragement that this embodying this new economy, as Luis was talking about, doesn't come without friction, but that friction is an indicator that we're moving in the right direction and that we're moving together, and that at the end we'll find the liberation and the freedom that we're working towards.
Oh, thank you, CJ. Jason or Carol or Rich, anything you'd like to add? This is a really rich conversation, so
We're going deep.
to use a financial metaphor.
We're going deep. I mean, I just, at the basic level, it goes back to how Richard started this, is really we have to love nature. We have to have reverence for it. We have to love the thing that we're protecting, that we want. And the challenge I see is that it is, even in my community outside of Denver, how fast things are growing, how subdivisions are coming in, and everybody's being disconnected from these open spaces, these places. And then it's the how kids are growing up on tech. And I'm glad the movement to get them off the tech in the schools is happening. And it's like the other day I was up in Rocky Mountain National Park at a visitor center, and there was a 5-year-old, and he saw a climbing wall, and he was just like, Mom, I want to climb, I want to climb. And he was just so enthusiastic about getting out there, like just he wanted that. And I thought this is beautiful because he's at the age he hasn't been exposed to the cell phones and technology. So I started thinking, okay, maybe we've lost maybe one generation to that. Like that's where they're at. But maybe right now we have the Children and Nature Network. We're all here. This is part of a movement. Now maybe we can hit this next generation and really get them out any way we can so that they identify as nature. And I think that we got to start working on that right away.
Like Carol?
Yeah, I'll add that to your question, how far are we? I have no idea. But what I can imagine is that, or what we need is like recognizing that there's no scarcity on Earth. There's actually an abundance. Earth is, it's going to be here long after we're gone, and it produces enough. There's enough of it. It's how we've allocated or prioritized what's important. So I think when you're in survival mode, it's hard to participate in that conversation. And yet those are the folks most affected by the current economy because it doesn't prioritize humans. If I can just use a quick metaphor, or it's like an iron phosphate barrier in a lake where iron precipitates phosphorus in a lake. So it holds it down so that the lake doesn't eutrophy, and then algal blooms like fill up the lake, and then it's not oxygen rich anymore. But sometimes that same iron phosphate barrier, that precipitated matter, it can start to release phosphorus back into the water if the oxygen conditions do not improve. So it's like this feedback loop that we're in right now. And it's hard to identify like what nutrient, well, we know what nutrients we need, right? We need to prioritize love, humanity, each other. But currently we're being overloaded by, and I'm not trying to shade phosphorus. It's a needed nutrient. But I'm trying to say we're getting an overload of one specific priority. And that's creating these conditions that are not healthy for an ecosystem. Not that there's not healthy swamps, there are, but for the sake of this conversation.
Thank you. More nature metaphors, please, Carol. I think, one thing that I think about a lot is how, the sort of dominant narrative about how species evolved is this, survival of the fittest and the competition. And really, Rich, what you were sharing, I mean, each one of you in your own way has talked about, actually what nature, shows us is a different story about what really creates resilience and what creates, strong ecosystems, and how do we start to live in ways that, where we're remembering that knowledge that we've it has been lost in some communities, not in all, for sure. So, well, maybe we're getting close-ish to the end here. Maybe I'll do one last question that each of you can respond to, and then we'll close out for the day. I think, maybe and I think I'm just gonna, as we've been having this conversation, I'm wondering if each one of you might reflect on just one thing that you're taking from this conversation, and that you might like to leave with our friends that have been with us here today. And CJ, since you went off screen, no, I'm kidding. I'm not going to call on you first. Jason, maybe I'll call on you first.
Think that what I'm taking away is mostly maybe emotional in my heart, and it is being a part of this group of people, being a part of a movement that's bigger than ourselves, Sometimes when I'm looking around at the world, everything seems so chaotic. It's easy to be cynical. And it's great to have a place like this where I could, like, I'm just feeling recharged. At the beginning, when Richard starts talking, I start crying. I'm glad I was off camera. But that right there is like, yes, I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path. And that's what I'm going to take away. I'm on the right path, and that we're doing something here that will make a difference.
Well, you are, Jason, and we're just glad to be able to shine a light on you and your great work. So thank you for all that you do. Luis, maybe I'll pass it over to you.
I'm taking hope, hope based on maybe Joanna Macy's work, where she would always say that hope doesn't really exist unless it's active hope. And active hope, because hope is the capacity to create new realities and new realities we wish to create. And as we get involved in creating those realities, we create hope that is active hope. And that in relation to how, the work we are all doing and what I've heard from, all the prize recipients, it's incredible in terms of activating agency. And it reminds me that, our relationality is not only with ourselves, with our kin, with our communities, and with nature. It's also with our ancestrality and also with our agency, because we need to remember where we're coming from, but also to really reflect on what type of ancestors we will become. And this is where we start creating coherence in our relationality. And then our agency is our capacity to enact in that active hope, in that capacity to write the story of the world we want to see, we want to create. And that starts in our relationship with ourselves, and from there outwards. So we all have the capacity to change, but we need to change it from within to without, and really focus on the circles where we have influence and where we can really look at each other, at each other's eyes, or at each other's leaves. If it's a plant, it doesn't matter, but really open our eyes and look around and really work to change that relationality around us. Because if we allow the complexities of the external world, where we have no influence, direct influence, then we'll just be sad and lose hope. So hope comes from activating agency right next to us and starting to create the conditions to be in right relation with all around us. So that's what I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Luis. And our good friend David Orr coined a phrase that said, he says, hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And I just think that that embodies who you are, Luis. And just thank you for your leadership and all of your work. CJ, just in time, you found an outlet.
Yes. Can you all hear me?
We can. You're a little frozen on your video, but we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Yeah. And adding on to what adding on is my favorite thing to do apparently, but adding on to what Luis is saying, I like to talk about freedom as the capacity to dream and the ability to change things in order to make that dream possible. And I think that's something connecting to what Luis was saying about the ancestors. I think I'll just end with an encouragement that our ancestors have been in situations and faced trials and tribulations that they persevered through to get us to this point. And so it's our we honor them by picking up the baton and running this leg of the race and handing it to the children, or the young, or working with the children. And so I think anytime I think of that, I'm encouraged, because I'm like, I know my ancestors pressed forward. I can do the same thing. because it means creating a new world that we're leaving for others.
Mm. Yeah, CJ, thank you for that, and yeah, just thank you for your work and for your always. I mean, you do embody that sense of community and humanity that you talk about so beautifully. So thank you for that. And Carol, maybe I'll pass it to you to close us out here. And again, congratulations on a well-deserved honor. We're just so delighted to shine a light on you today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending and just for all the work that you all do, attendees as well. I know you're here because you care. Oh, sorry. I thought it ended because my screen changed. I was like, okay. Yeah, so just for all your work that you do, we're all interconnected and interdependent. And I am extremely grateful and my heart is full whenever I spend time with you all, especially at Children in Nature Network events, because you all know how to steer a conversation. So thank you all.
Carol, thank you. Thank you for your work. Order your copy of Noticing.
Yes.
And I want to just say thanks again to you, Rich, and for allowing us to honor you and these incredible prize winners over the last 5 years in your name. Just huge gratitude to you for allowing us to. And I think this is one way we grow this movement, right? By telling these stories and shining the light on these incredible leaders. So thank you. And want to say thanks again, of course, to the Brandwine Institute, who, because of generous donors like Brandwine and many others, were able to provide these kinds of opportunities free of charge and help continue to grow the movement. So with that, I'll just say thanks everyone for coming. We look forward to seeing you all again soon, and be good to yourselves, to each other, and to nature. Thanks a lot.